Welcome to Cut the Bull, an insightful podcast which addresses the news of the day and the cultural issues plaguing our society, bringing logic and context to these topics and discussing solutions too real for mainstream pundits. Now, here are your hosts, Charles Love, Shemeka Michelle, and Wilfred Riley.
Hello and welcome to Cut the Bull. I am Charles Love alongside my co-hosts Shemeka Michelle and Wilfred Riley. And our guest this week is Bethany Mandel. She's a columnist, an editor at Ricochet, mother, which is important for the conversation, and co-author of Stolen Youth, How Radicals Are Erasing Innocence and Indoctrinating a Generation. Bethany, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So, lot to talk about here. We all have had many a conversation, authored piece, media hit, and argument about this topic. So it's going to be pretty interesting. I guess we should start with, now I guess I'm going to flip it. I'm going to start with more a calmer thing. How you all came together to write the book and how you decided who was going to write which chapters.
Yeah. So Carol and I have been friends for a very long time. I couldn't even place it, probably over 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And we just found each other, we found ourselves writing what the other was thinking, and we kind of had to race to the editor to get it first.
Mm-hmm.
And you would think that that relationship would be pretty contentious, that we would have a rivalry and there would not be a lot of camaraderie ship.
Mm-hmm.
But that was not the case. We both got along really well, and she would often say, you know, I don't have time to write this. Why don't you have Bethany Mandel write it? Or I would say, there's a new editor at the Daily Mail. Here's his email. You should introduce yourself. I bet you should write for them next. And so we kind of had this idea in our heads of writing a book together because we didn't want to write it alone because it felt so scary and so big. And our initial book proposal, which I think that we pitched in January of 2020, was basically like, you're trying too hard. Parenting, like, roll it back, slow your roll. You're just like making yourself neurotic and crazy unnecessarily and making parenthood a misery. And then COVID happened and no one wanted to be told to stop being so freaking neurotic. But that was kind of the moment that people needed to hear that. People needed to hear stop being so freaking neurotic. And so we sort of both independently were very quickly on the open the schools bandwagon, for very different reasons and from very different perspectives. And we were on the same page with COVID as well. And so we sort of stepped back a little bit and saw how COVID was impacting children and how it became a political vehicle through which adults who were extremely neurotic themselves were sort of living out their politics through kids and inflicting their politics on kids. And we said to ourselves, like, this is a real escalation of how people are trying to use children as activists. And so we sort of looked at it initially through the lens of COVID and then realized, like, this is just an escalation of a trend. And then we sort of tried to break down like all these different news stories and all these anecdotes that were personal, like all the different lenses through which we saw this happening. And it was a really easy sort of how we delineated who was writing which chapter, because they were different passions of ours.
But no, that's good. But one, it makes me think that means Will and Shemeka and I should write a book together because he's like, I'm down. But the other thing is, I get that, but you also said that you first pitched the idea right before COVID. So obviously you knew that this problem of woke, as we can label it simply as we get into it, was a bigger problem that people saw bubbling on the surface, but when you dug down, it was going to be a lot worse than that. And so when did you first notice that this was a big problem?
So I don't know if our initial proposal in January 2020 totally isolated sort of how we saw. I don't think that we saw the full picture when, and honestly,
so it was more parenting than cultural stuff.
Yeah, it was, but it's all intertwined. It's all sort of this neuroticism is coming from a place of anti-child and anti-parent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and uh, and a lot of why parenting has become miserable is because we've decided that childhood isn't a time of innocence, and the objective isn't to raise sort of fully functioning, resilient adults. Um, I don't I don't think that's the objective anymore. And Tucker Carlson in his speech at Heritage, there was some interesting little tidbits in there. And one of them was like, we all used to sort of operate under the position that we're all trying to achieve the greatest good, and we're coming at that from different directions. And he argued, and I'm not sure that I disagree, that perhaps we're not. Perhaps the objective isn't, um, you know, to raise a generation of people who are uh, moral and upright and functional. Maybe that's not the goal anymore. And that was sort of what we were getting at in the book with the war on resilience in the last chapter, that,
Mm-hmm.
you can't foment a revolution with a population that is happy and well adjusted. And we're raising a generation of kids that are terrified. They're terrified of a gunman coming into their school. They're terrified of, what if I don't like to wear dresses? Maybe I'm a boy. They're terrified of who they are at the very core of their being. They're terrified of climate change. That's a conversation that I've heard a million times.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's, maybe the goal isn't that those kids grow up to fix everything and to cure climate change. And maybe the goal is to make them terrified and to uh, sap from them their will to live and their will to improve this world. I mean, if you look at the rates of how many children people are having when they're having them, there's a real sense of hopelessness. And I think it's all rooted in this.
This is a great point to get, because I write down bullets of ideas, not actual full questions, just what we want to talk about. But based on
Yeah.
what you say, it kind of changes the direction. So I want to go to Shemeka and Will. Shemeka, you first, because you just touched on something. I don't necessarily disagree with what Tucker said. Um, but I just think there's an adjoinder in a sense, in that and that's why I talk about the culture so much, because I think we're the culture, we're in a cultural rot, and we're sapped from a collective morality, whether we were right or wrong. We used to have a collective idea in the country of, we kind of agreed on what was right and what was wrong,
Yeah.
and now
Yeah.
we've gotten to the point that all 340 million of us can decide what's right and wrong. So Shemeka, we talk about this a lot, but isn't that part of it, in the sense that only way I'm saying Tucker's slightly wrong is that we don't want the same thing anymore, and we used to want these things. I think a lot of the people, there's a percentage that's just so political or Marxist driven that we want to change the culture. But for a lot of these people we argue with on Twitter, we see they think they are doing the moral good, but they've lost all their morals, so they don't remember what it is. The cultural shifted to a collective, away from religion, whatever it is, but also away from social norms where we all agree that these things are right or wrong. I was talking to a friend of mine from high school recently, and he was talking about what the difference is, non-political, not on Twitter. And he said the difference is people were doing bad, crazy stuff when we were younger. We did some of that stuff. But when an adult saw it collectively, full stop, all of them said that was wrong. Now they say,
Yeah.
well, we don't know if it's wrong yet. Let's look at how the parents were, how many siblings they had, how they grew up, what race they
Right.
are, what gender they are, how much money they have. Then we'll collect that data and we'll determine if it was right or wrong, as opposed to just saying, no, we
Yeah.
punched the guy for no reason, he was wrong. So Shemeka, is that it? Is it a little of both, of course, but is the bigger issue, which one's bigger? Is the bigger issue that we don't want the same thing, and there's that big divide, or just that they think that they are still moving in the right direction, they're progressing, they just have lost the idea of what that really means?
Yeah, I definitely think most of them think they are doing the right thing. of course, they're nuts, in my opinion, but I do think that they genuinely feel like, hey, this is what's best. This is what's better. This is better than the way my mom did it. This is better than how my grandma did it. And for many of us, I do think religion did shape a lot of what we felt was normal. And now that people, especially in the Black community, have kind of tossed, the white man's Christianity to the side, it's like anything goes. And so now it's more, it's just more of whatever you want to do and less of what you felt like was right or like you had been trained to think was right. And so if you grew up in a household where they were strictly, you are a man or you are a woman and men don't wear dresses, and they genuinely feel like, oh, if I let my son wear this princess outfit for Halloween, I am being nicer and more gentle to my child. My child is going to figure out their way on their own. Hey, if they want to smoke a cigarette at 7, I'm just going to let them, and so they really feel like they are doing what's best. And by the way, speaking of children, last week we did the show. I had a 17-year-old. Today, I had an 18-year-old. Woo woo for me. Raise the roof. My children are grown.
That's right. I'm done. Get out. That's
time to leave.
Right. But Will, I know you can add some wonderful stuff to that point. One thing I want to say, I just want to toss you up a bone with an example from Twitter, because I know you were posting some things about this. One great example: some of these people are playing in the political partisanship thing, of course, but some of these people do that, jump to conclusions every time because they love this stuff. They live this stuff. How many times today were people tweeting about lynching?
Well, quite a few.
In what context?
Are you asking?
With the guy in New York who was killed.
The subway thing. Yeah, so I'm not as connected as one might think I am.
Right.
The news of the day.
No, I get it, but it just happened. It reminds me of that. It's just a good segue to, and obviously moving away from religion. That's even fine for some people, but the problem is they have nothing to replace it with.
Yeah, I mean, so I like a couple things. First of all, I mean, in terms of what Bethany asked about, a crazy homeless guy got killed on a train. Basically, I mean, a crazy vagrant went on a train and started.
He's a Michael Jackson impersonation.
No, that's not a plus for me, first of all. But I mean,
he was seriously. So I want to explain to you that today is Thursday. Every Friday, my husband explains what's happened in the last week because I don't pay enough attention. So I'm the farthest removed from my weekly update of like what has happened in this world.
This is the greatest interview ever.
This is a huge.
Was he actually
right
was he actually a Michael Jackson impersonator?
I guess
like not now. They went back
he was just as a quick comment on this. He was a homeless guy who had a Michael Jackson jacket and who would dance in train stations from time to time. But that didn't, and I'm not making fun of this, but that actually didn't have anything to do with why he was killed. He apparently went on a train and he had a bunch of mental illness issues. This guy had been arrested 44 previous times, mostly for violent crimes. I actually looked up I pulled the guy's record. He had an outstanding warrant for assault on, I think, an old lady. He punched someone in the face. So
he was only 67.
So, but what precipitated his death?
Well, he went on the train. Who killed him? Well, he got into a fight with some people on the train. He went on to a PAT car, and I think the New York 6, and he started screaming about how he was going to either hurt or kill. One of you guys might correct me. Everyone on the train took his coat off, threw it on the ground.
Yeah.
And he's not taking no for an answer.
That seems threatening.
I'm hungry. I need money. I'm not taking no for an answer. I'll hurt or kill whichever. All of you. Right. I ain't scared to go back to jail. I mean, and finally, there were 3 guys on the train. It actually was a black, white, and Hispanic guy, as I understand. They're only talking about the white
nice
guys.
They walk into a bar.
The 3
diversity. Yeah, they walk into the criminal justice system now. But basically, so this guy was acting crazy, and these 3 guys, the black guy, I think, was an MMA fighter, white guy was a Marine. They restrained him, and they took it like he really went to the wrong train car. But they took him down to the floor in these kind of judoka holds. And unfortunately, he's strangled, air was cut off. I mean, this went on for a couple of minutes.
Oh my
And
God.
now there are these calls to take the Marine guy. No one's really mentioning the black dude for reasons, and lock
For
him up
reasons.
because
Did
people are
they
calling
know
this
each
a
other?
lynching.
No,
Did they know
it was
each other?
just it
They
was just
just
like
joined
somebody
forces.
trying to stop him. I did people.
Wow.
I promise I did not try to go down this rabbit hole.
Okay.
I'm not
But
So
saying whether the
I'm
guy's
fine
innocent.
moving out of it and answering the question though. Like, I mean, basically
sorry, you had to be the Seth.
But
Seth was
was
gonna be
he
so disappointed
lynched?
he
Is
didn't
the
get to tell me
question.
it's
the
all good.
story.
Nobody got lynched. But so I have kind of a question for Bethany here. Like, so with the morality thing, everyone knows I take the opposite position on that whole idea. But like joking aside, like I do think that there has been a loss of consensus morality in the USA. In
Yeah.
that, like in the USA in 1960, almost everyone would identify as Christian or Jewish. There might be
Christian.
bit, yeah.
There
Well,
was
I
like
mean,
five Jews. Let's be
there's
real.
like
They
three
call it the
percent solid
Judeo-Christian
trace.
values, though,
Depends
Bethany.
what
1%.
city you were in. But at any, but the today that's really declined. Like the fastest
Yeah.
growing religious population is nuns. Don't believe in it. Not habits,
Yeah.
but like no beliefs. And I'm sure that does have some effects. But I guess my question actually is a little tangential from that because when you look at things that we think of as bad, like bullying, fist fighting, shooting guns, that's actually all down dramatically from the 80s and the 90s when people were more
Mhm.
religious. It's starting to spike back up again. But I mean, you can talk about like, is the new, atheist quasi morality worse than biblical morality? Probably. But I actually have a kind of different question, which is why are people so neurotic? And like brief block of facts. I did a bunch of research on young people for my latest article for National Review. And
The
it was
youths.
astonishing not because they were so decadent and wild, but because they were so panicked about everything.
Yeah.
Like 55% of them really favored intense censorship. Like they thought it was worth not being able to talk if quote unquote POC wouldn't be harmed. They were almost sexless. Like I could see a parent supporting this, but it was like
Right.
21% of them by like their high school senior year had ever had what I would consider sex. Like they were doing some quirky stuff on the side, but like actually had a girlfriend that they sometimes slept with, like went to dances with. 21%, 79% didn't. And these were largely middle class samples if you looked at the
Yeah.
demographics. And this to me is utterly bizarre. Like I grew up in the hood and then went to college and good sized cities. Like I kind of skipped over that just ordinary suburban life where people believe in things. But the for
He
that
is on a
demographic,
roll
why are these
today.
people so neurotic? What's wrong with them? Like you can, if you look
So
at the American upper middle class, they're all terrified. They think they're going to die, and it's
yeah.
weird because even though we might have fought them after a football game or something years ago, you need that group to be functional. What's up?
Yeah. So I mean, I think a lot of it is sort of the theory behind why allergies are up, that your immune system is not being challenged enough. And I think that that's the same with resiliency. I in the last chapter tell my sob story of how both my parents died when I was in my teens.
Right.
And fairly traumatic, both instances. And that built in me, like I'm weirdly grateful for it because it's very easy to shrug off being canceled on Twitter when you buried both of your parents in your teens.
Mhm.
And so I I don't think that most people my age in their 30s have had experiences anywhere resembling that. And I think that that lack of resiliency is manifesting in sky high rates of not just anxiety and depression and all of these mental health things, but also their passion for life. When you've seen death that early and that
Mhm.
frequently, you really develop a deep appreciation for life that they don't seem to have and they don't seem to share. And again, I think that's part of why people aren't having as many children because they're kind of like, well, I'll do it later. Like, I don't know. And I kind of saw it as this gives deep meaning to life. And what is there to life? I mean, it's certainly not like backpacking through Europe. I've done that. It's like not great. I was fine when I was in my teens, but there's a real sort of lack of experience, and a lot of that is because their parents sheltered them. A lot of it is because they're spending their entire life glued to a screen. And that's not to say that I'm not guilty of that to some degree. Like I get the screen time reports from Apple too. But I mean, when you've experienced this like tangential experience of life through a screen and you know what we were talking about earlier with this total lack of faith, um, there there's not much to life when you have no God and you have, you know, it's just it feels very empty and very meaningless. And I don't think that they've experienced challenge in any sort. And so like this feels very tangential, but I'm looking, and this is also very controversial. I'm looking at prom pictures. We're in May now. I have people in my newsfeed who are posting pictures of their children that we would never have been allowed to go to prom looking like that. And the parents are the ones taking the pictures and proudly posting them. And I think that they're even not experiencing being told, no,
But, real quick,
no,
I don't want to assume. So I want to tell, when you say looking like that, I'm assuming you mean the dress, right? The way they're dressing,
yes, it's
scantily
not
clad and
enough
all that.
clothing. It's not enough clothing.
Well, the parents
And
know the kids aren't going to sleep together. I mean, they're
Right,
all
it's
these
funny. I was just gonna
helpless
say,
little
but no, Bethany,
tadpoles.
he's joking, but he's making a good point because I was gonna say two really important things about what you said because you brought those up. I mean, you kind of let the cat out of the bag. I was gonna mention what you mentioned before, but to what Will said, like how did this happen? We're collectively the grown-ups in the room, not specifically us. We did this, right?
yeah,
In the 90s and the 2000s by, like you said, coddling, by going from, so the self-esteem movement, we went from, we don't want people to feel bad
nope.
about themselves, which makes sense, to
Participation
you're the
trophy.
greatest kid ever, no one's greater than
Mhm.
you, you're the best, you're the prettiest, you're the smartest, all that kind of stuff, right? And I
Yeah.
say that but you talked about two quick things. You talked about your mom, obviously, which was more agonizing because it was longer and you wrote so deeply and passionately about that, and then your father, right? But I'm reading that, I'm like, this is like painful to read, right? I can imagine what it's like. You put yourself in that place, and how you wrote about it. But to be honest, because of where we are with all this stuff that the book was about, when I got to the end of it, I got mad. You know why I got mad, Bethany? I got mad because I said, you told this painfully personal story, but society today will say, yeah, but she's white. So what with all that? Right? You still come out of that privilege. Yeah, you lost your parents in really dramatic fashion, but you got your whiteness. Even Oprah would tell you that. So that's the part of it. If you talk about why they're afraid of everything, because we told them to be. We told them that we were going to die in 17 years. Okay, by 1999. Okay, by 2001. Okay, by 2012. We just keep telling them either way you're going to die soon. We told them that people were snatching all the kids off the street. I mean, Will and I talked about this in several interviews, snatching them in the panel vans when they weren't, right? We kind of, so you might die. If you don't die because climate change is an existential threat, somebody might snatch you off the street, or police will shoot you because they're shooting 27,000 people in a year. So we keep layering all this stuff on. So of course they're going to be afraid of anything. Now I don't really get why they're not having sex or why they're not doing anything, because the last thing I want to say about that, you talk about posting the pictures of the prom. I laugh at what Will said because you're talking about how these girls are dressed. Will said because the parents are worried because they know they're not having sex. I'm shocked by the number. There were always, the groups, the jocks and the goth kids, and people went like that. But now, from what I'm seeing in the pictures and through friends, it's like 90% of them don't go on a date anymore. So they're going, but they're not going together. It's just a group of guys and their bros and a group of girls showing up at a party.
Yeah,
it's a group of people that don't know how to ask people on dates or do anything similar.
And then when they get there, they do this.
Yeah, but that's exactly right. Like, it's just like with Charles, when you're saying, well, the people are wearing kind of skimpy clothes, they're just going with a group of girls and they're not going to leave with any guys in terms of I don't follow like youth prom trends, but I mean, like, you see the same thing online, and like the parents are talking about it. Like, I wish my daughter would have gone with a date is one of the most common things you see. That nice boy from the soccer team. Charles, what are you pointing at, bro?
We got a pair with a high school senior. Dish.
No, I was just going to say, I don't know these kids that are not having sex because except for mine. But
I was gonna say, except of course, my sacred,
yeah,
there's only one
except
woman
my
that never
sweet
had sex, and
virgin.
that's my mother.
My
Okay,
perfect lamb.
look here, punk.
Yeah, I raised virgins until they were 18. So,
Well, now he's
but these
18.
kids they're dating. I think they're asking of the prom is like over the top. They do these whole things like as if
It's like a proposal.
engaged. Yes.
Yeah.
It's such a big deal. And I'm like, wow, that's not what we did.
I don't know. Every single person I know, their kids went by themselves.
If I can jump in there with one thing though, it's really situational. Like when I said like these are mostly like middle to upper middle class audiences that are saying this stuff, like there's a really big divide in terms of my friends like back home. So like hood kids, the people I know in Appalachia, immigrants, like people that got here from Poland, they don't have this problem. It's something like the average number of kids for like a Catholic Polish immigrant. I was teasing one of my buddies about this the other day, but like he had the numbers for real. It was like 3.8 or something. So that's not the issue. It's like legacy, fairly well off Americans, like the people you think of as most of the country that sort
people
of
who can afford to have kids.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. The people that could logically have sort of the American dream seem to be complaining the most about how it's almost unobtainable. And that, in my opinion, thinking about like 10 buddies of mine, is because they put these unbelievable criteria on it. Like, of course, I would only live in 4 or 5 cities. Like Chicagoans usually don't like New York, but we'll consider it. And then, in the Midwest, maybe like Indianapolis, maybe you go to Houston, Austin. There are like 10 you'll hear people mention, nowhere else. You'd never go to like, where's Notre Dame? Terre Haute, Indiana, wherever it is. South Bend, yeah. Anyway, I went to Illinois, but like no, they would never consider going to like this decent sized city. And I had Pete Buttigieg, the Golden Dome is there, and setting up a tech business or something. It's like one of 5 places, one of 10 neighborhoods there. I want to make this position for many of my female friends before I have a kid. And meanwhile, people that just move to the USA to compete often have families of 6. Still, religious people often have families of 6. Still,
right?
Specifically,
like look, right there you go,
representing.
Well, right,
yes.
Exactly.
Stand up.
So
your bloodline will live on.
Right.
That's the idea. But that's it though. Like that's the ideal. I'm sort of forward thinking and have hope in the future. And parenthood requires a degree of selflessness. Does that mean like it's like this miserable, horrible slog? No, but like, do I want to be wiping someone's butt at 3 o'clock in the morning? Not particularly. It's not what I like to do. Did I want to be up last night all night long with all 4 of my sons? No, I did not. But that's part of the job. And they don't want the hard. They don't want the difficult because they've been told that difficult is bad. And difficult can be bad, but it also can be wonderful. And like they've only gotten one message about hard. And it's
not
it's
only
to be
difficult.
avoided.
And it's not only difficult. So when you talk about difficult, you're only pointing out the difficult part and not talking about any good part. You make everything is all bad.
Everyone has to complain all the time and everyone has to wear the mantle of victimhood. And so, we're going to see it on Mother's Day. I don't know when this episode is being released, but like motherhood is going to be messaged relentlessly as a horrible martyrdom.
Where they message it? Because I hear they're already priming people by saying you're sending them. I saw the post about the message saying, well, if you want to opt out of all of our Mother's Day wishes because it hurts you so much. What, Shemeka, you haven't seen this?
No.
Oh yeah. So
companies are sending Happy Mother's Day.
Companies are sending out pre-Mother's Day notes so you can opt out of the Mother's Day emails and promos so you won't curl in a ball and cry when Mother's Day comes.
So I will actually I will defend that. I will be the contrarian here. I lost my mother when I was 16. Mother's Day was very hard for 10 years. And I think it's maybe not the worst thing in the world that we're recognizing that like motherhood is Mother's Day is really difficult because motherhood is very fraught. There's a lot of emotions there for a lot of people. Lost a mother, you want to be a mother. Motherhood is one of the biggest things in our, human existence, not just in our society, but in human existence. And that can be upsetting. Yeah. That being said, I somehow survived 10 years of not being a mother and not being a daughter. And I just like stayed off social for the day. And I like didn't love it, and I still don't love it, to be honest with you. I've been a mom for almost 10 years and I still don't like logging onto Instagram on Mother's Day because everyone's like, my mom is so great. I'm like,
Right.
I killed my mom.
All right,
Yeah,
Bethany.
I don't,
I don't.
I don't know what it feels like to be without a mom and have those feelings, but some of these issues sound like they may differ upon race. Like these sound like white women issues to
Ouch.
be so
Ouch.
like, oh, motherhood is
Leave it to
just
Shemeka to
hard
be all
and it's
honest.
difficult and it's, it's you just got to do the damn thing. If you have
Yes.
had kids, you just got to do it. And there is no, you get to kind of sit and sulk about how difficult or emotional it is. Like, I don't think I ever thought, I don't want to wipe her butt at 3
Well,
a.m.
But Beth,
It's just
it's a
come along with the
luxury thing.
job.
but hold on,
It-
Bethany.
the-
I was gonna push back for one other reason. It's because because you told your story. It's traumatic, and I get your pain. But you just wrote a book. We all talk about this cannibalizing movement from the left. And the one thing we've all learned is you cannot cede an inch
I
because
know.
it never ends. So
I know.
your pushback, being the contrarian, on surface makes sense. But the problem is you can't stop. You would have to do the same thing for Father's Day, and then Christmas, and then birthdays, and then you would never end. Tuesdays.
But they are.
I don't like Tuesdays. So now you can opt out of Tuesdays.
That's exact that. I mean, they've been doing that for eons. I mean, if you think about like the number of people who are like, I don't post pictures of myself pregnant because that can be triggering for so and so. I didn't post engagement pictures because I know there's a lot of single friends who are really struggling. Like all of that has been the message for a really long time. And Shemeka, I love you. We are like we are kindred spirits because like it's coming to be that whiny is coming from a real severe place of privilege. And like remember when we were told to check our privilege in like January of 2020 and then that stopped
we
when
weren't,
like
so
the
we
pandemic.
don't remember that. No. Will
I love
check your
I'm gonna bring it back. I'm gonna bring it
back.
back. Check your freaking privilege. Like the privilege to be offended by the stupidest crap on the planet. Like let's bring it back.
All right, so we got to get to like 10 minutes of woke. We got to cleanse ourselves of the wokeness, just dive right in it.
Okay.
The book is about stolen youth, so we got to get to that. So
okay. Carol will be mad if we didn't.
Yeah, because otherwise we'll get in trouble if we don't get back to that. So, I mean, many of the things, but you put your unique spin on it, but many of the things are things we talk about, we write about, and all that here. So, but obviously there's a problem with it. So obviously you mentioned briefly, I don't want to spend much time on it because I don't really care about the viral, no definition of woke stupidness. I don't care. And I don't know you as well, but I know Carol. Like I said, Carol's been in it. I tweeted something about it. I say it because I say it on here all the time. It's like, I don't use any of the terms not because they're wrong, because everybody has their own definition. Had you defined that perfectly, it still would have been an issue because the woman would have been like, well, that's not what it is. Somebody else would have been like, see, they're just using this. Doesn't matter. I go to the core of what you're doing. Paint the picture of what you're doing. Tell me if this makes sense. I don't know. I know because I sent it to you, and I know Will and Shemeka saw it. So I'm running for CEC. So I wrote this piece about what's going on in my school. And so I get all these comments, a lot of them good, but the negative ones, I love those. Like some people don't like reading the comments. I love being attacked. Love it. So, but the thing about it was nobody said the things that I complained about. Not one person said, I don't know what the big deal is. That's totally fine, Charles. Not one person. Mm-hmm. What they said was he's lying. What they said was that's not happening. What they said
New York is safe.
Right. There's no way they did that. And I'm like, or the ones I like is where they say right wing, MAGA, and they throw all these terms on it. I don't even argue. I say, okay, that's cool. But can you, all right, I'm MAGA, whatever. Can you address the example I gave and tell me whether you think that's okay or not? Silence. Right. So that's the problem I have with the definition is that, it's not about what you call this, that, or the other. Is it okay to tell people to do the oppressor-oppressed dynamic in a classroom? Is it okay to tell a third grader that, you can change your gender? Is it okay to just completely spin everything, take away all the traditions and do this? So that's not even my issue. But what I will ask, depending on who the audience is, so you joked about not knowing the title. I got to go back to the subtitle because I know the word is in it somewhere. In the subtitle is something about indoctrinating, right? Indoctrinating generation. Yeah, hold it up so people buy it. But so it says indoctrinating the generation. So forget about the woke. I think the thing that might be, because we talk about this a lot. A lot of people don't understand. These people, these squeaky wheel idiots are very small percentage of people. They're loud. They're in positions of power. They control the media. They make the TV shows. So it seems like a lot, but it's not a lot of people. The problem is the regular everyday working guy and woman who's just living their lives. They don't know it until it hits their doorstep. So we need people like us and people like you in your book to alert them. So my concern, if someone sees it and they don't even know, and they've been hearing the talking points in the headlines, but they don't know the details behind it, and they see indoctrination, that would be the thing I think would kind of freak them out. What do you think about that?
I mean, I'm okay with people being freaked out. I mean, people
No,
should
I
be
mean freaking them
alarmed.
out to the point that they're like, well, I shouldn't listen to this person. That's what I mean. Oh, she froze.
I mean, then how open of a mind would they have to any of this?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I can
Am I
see it. Yeah.
here?
No, you good. Yeah.
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 Um, so I mean, I think that there's a lot of people who are remaining willfully ignorant, because it's easier. I remain willfully ignorant of the world around me all the time, and that's why on Thursday I don't know anything about this subway thing, because my husband hasn't filled me in yet.
Shame on
Every
Seth.
Friday, I'm like,
Shame on
okay,
him.
honey, what happened? What
We
happened
need to
this
go to
week?
2 times a
Let's.
week. 2 times a week.
I know we never see each other. To be honest, we're like ships passing in the night.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is willful ignorance, and people are also just keeping their heads down and trying to survive, and life is hard, and a lot of this feels political and it feels politicized, and it's not, and I think that you're right. I mean, the number of friends that I have who have been really red pilled over the course of the last few years, who are sort of like, oh my god, they don't realize it, unfortunately, until their daughter comes home from MCPS with a breast binder and declares herself transgender. True story. That's
Mhm.
something that happened to a friend. Or another woman who contacted me who said, my daughter went to a sleepaway program. I talked about this in the introduction. So went to a sleepaway program via the public school system. And it turned out one of the counselors in her bunk was named Nick, and she's unsure if it was a biological male or biological female. And the principal's not sure, and the principal won't even disclose even if they did figure it out. People are not realizing the danger that is on the doorstep until they open the door, and then they're like, oh, huh, that's not Elijah at the front door. That's more satanic. But yeah, I mean, unfortunately, fortunately for my book sales, more and more people are getting robbed by reality and realizing like, oh, this is not a political issue. This is not just some sort of right-wing MAGA talking point.
Mhm.
Because and this was a lot of why we wrote the book, because like I went to the library with my kids, and you're gonna see this next month. June's coming up, baby. And you are gonna go to the library, and it's not gonna just be like Sally has two mommies and Billy has two daddies. It's gonna be Billy's new dress. It's going to
It's
be
the name of the
heavy
book is
emphasis on
Jacob.
that
It's
T.
Jacob's New Dress, right?
Jacob, thank
Shemeka,
you.
she saw it.
Jacob.
It's Jacob, and it won't be
Yep.
just a library; it'll be in the grocery store. I say that because my teacher, we get copies of all the books. So it's open about it. It's not they
Mhm.
hide it, so they send it to us.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
like,
it's Jacob's getting a new dress,
yeah.
and parents are just, it's just, and this is the book. Like we can sort of go into chapter by chapter of how it's just coming at you from every single freaking
Right.
angle. When you fill out a form at the pediatrician and they ask you what your 3-day old's gender
Right.
identity
Yeah.
is,
Right.
you're like, why is this on a form? Why is this on
Why is
a
this on the phone?
invitation form?
I can't speak for them.
We'll find
I
out. We'll
just wanted
find
to
out
trigger
what they
Shemeka.
are.
I'm sorry. That was for Shemeka's benefit. Will, but she says this everywhere. That's a good point. So because you have a very, very good definition of woke, right? And after that thing happened, he posted it.
Where
And
were
I was
you a
like,
month ago?
right. And so, but I replied to it. I said, that's
I'm
good.
available. I was on Twitter. I'll trade
Right.
numbers and all that.
Right. But I replied to it saying, that's good. But, if you want to say reality of where it's gone now, the actual current, because it's all morphs, the actual current definition would be too bad, right? It would be hurtful because it really is because to Bethany and Carol's credit, they talk about the origin of woke, the Black community, and how they said being woke to the racism that exists around. So really what woke is being woke and alert to all of the problems. But the problem is everything's a problem. And then the thing they add to is the fact that we and only we have the answers to it. So it's not just race and gender, right? It's homelessness, mental health, science, abortion. I mean, everything. Every single thing is a problem, and only we have the answers. And if you don't agree with us on these things, then you're a heretic, right? So to that, one of the most important chapters that you did was about medicine. I mean, so Will, I was talking to you, right? So Bethany wrote the chapter about medicine and the problems having these views, bring to medical school, the way we practice medicine and all that stuff. And it made me think about our interview with Chris Ferguson, where I was asking him about something because I tweeted something because the APA, because Bethany writes about the APA, in addition to their apology for white privilege and the things they've done in the past, they were writing, from a scientific standpoint about babies being racist. And I basically just tweeted that's hooey, get out of here. And then people were attacking me like, how can you say that? This is the APA. They stand on all this glory. How can you go against them? And so I asked Chris Ferguson about it. And he was like, yeah, and I'm a member of APA, not to be soon because I'm leaving. But, his point was, and Will points out some wonderful things about how people write these research papers and things, but they're citing something that someone made up. And then other people collectively cite it. So then it becomes, it's been peer reviewed because 47 pieces out there exist from it, but they're all sourcing the same guy that made it up, when he was drunk one night at a bar.
We see that a lot with the gender ideology stuff. And one of my favorite people who writes about that is Jesse Singal.
Jesse, yes. Mm-hmm. Will, so what do you want to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, I think that the actual definition of woke in the book, where I think the first chapter, it's broken down like this is this basic idea of, structural problem. Like it's not just a one sentence definition. Like the authors go on
and
for pages.
I say that in the clip. I was like, we wrote an entire chapter. And like, I kind of like froze. I was like, I don't know how to do this in a sound.
It's 3 paragraphs. Go read it.
I do think that some of the snappy definitions, like the woke definition I use, myself and I think Chris Rufo actually came up with just brainstorming. And it's like what Ibram Kendi and what's his name, Richard Delgado say. Like all of society is structured to oppress. You can see.
I said that in the freaking clip.
This actually said really well in the book. Like, so a good 1-bar definition of woke would just be all of society is structured to oppress blank bullshit group that I'm arguing for. But I mean, like, so yeah,
the clip, but I just froze for 15 freaking seconds. That will follow me for the rest of my life.
It's happened to all of us. I mean, it usually happens when there's some kind of intentional setup. Like I would bet, and you've mentioned this in passing, that there was something going on, like kind of hot mic talk, like, these moms, they think, like you mentioned that there was this sort of criticism of motherhood, and then they just pop back to you, and the expression flashes back from enemy to cheerful, right? And it's like, and what exactly do you mean by all the core concepts in your book? So yeah, I mean, I'm pretty fast talking after law school and stuff, but I've had that happen. I wouldn't worry about it. But the 3 ideas of wokeness, I think, and then I guess I have a question. I think Charles, Shemeka have follows as well. But one, society structured to oppress whoever. And this is great because it's literally so pliable. Like the original group. Yeah, the original groups were Black Americans, maybe Jews or Irishmen until the relatively modern era. Like, no, but I think people use this term in like New York, Chicago. No. Well, no, those are all whites now, and all whites are privileged. Yeah. And that, of course, is not at all.
She is tuned in. If you say anything.
Asians and Nigerians, in fact, are white, which is amazing. Yes. It's just one of the greatest miracles of our time. But so, like, 1, society's all structured to oppress whoever. 2, any gap in performance is evidence of this. And 3, so we need magic equity and communism. I mean, that's basically what every woke argument, I think, is going to come back to. And I don't really know if I have a follow-up question after that. I can just dive the ball back again.
She's taking notes.
If people are actually taking notes, 1, society is structured to oppress whoever. So like wokeness began as an idea a little pre the Black Civil Rights Movement. It meant like Bayard Rustin, right? Like being aware of what at
Right.
the time was often real racism.
Right.
And so the idea of society structured to oppress Black people. But now every other group has kind of jumped on the Black civil rights movement.
Right.
Like
As they
feminists
normally do.
yeah, feminists, yeah, we was kangs. But no, like feminists at least had a case in the 60s. But I mean, then gay, trans, illegal immigrants is the one that kind of pisses me off. Like we too, as a victim group, hobos and other homeless individuals. But so society is structured to oppress us. Like the fat studies movement will argue
Right.
that everything in society is designed to benefit thin, fit people, not because that's the norm, but because of the equivalent of racism.
Right.
Two, you know, like what everyone on the panel I think said, but like any gap shows that. So like if whites are outpacing blacks, and the only two groups that are ever compared really for this one are whites and blacks. No one ever compares like Asians and Mexicans, where the gap's much larger. But any gap due to racism or due to oppression. And three, solution is magic communism. Like equity, whatever, the terms vary.
Right.
Yeah. So
Cultural Marxism is like,
yeah.
I think, a good sort of punchy. I've thought a lot about this since that happened. Cultural Marxism, I think, is a very punchy way of describing it.
That's a great two-worder. James Lindsay says race Marxism, and he said he might have to update that because now it's not just race, it's like people who say that their gender is demi-cat. But it's something Marxism. Like communism at root is the idea that all of society is structured to benefit the ruling class who are lying about it. And all of these theories are just lower IQ versions of communism. It's like society is structured to benefit men. Like I got into an argument with a feminist friend just very briefly recently because she argued that marriage was an institution designed to get men as much sex as possible. And like I've generally been pretty happy in my long-term relationships, and I was like, I don't know really if that's true as versus like the bar scene or Tinder. Like, what do you mean by that?
Right.
But her idea was it's not to protect women, it's not to make both people in a couple reasonably satisfied. It's to allow men to exploit women every day sexually. And the guys in the room were just cracking up laughing, but this is a serious idea in feminist theory. So it's something replacing the big bad. Used to be the rich man, now it's the man, the white man, the fat man, or the slim man. You can make fun of it, but that's really what it is.
Bethany, real quick, why don't I mean we talk about it all the time, but I'd like to hear your thoughts. Why don't they, the people who push it, realize it's not working? See, that's the angle I usually use. Okay, all right, all the white people are racist. That's fine. Is what you're doing working? Is focusing on race, is focusing on gender, is lowering standards, is changing medicine, is changing admission, getting rid of tests. Is it working?
So real communism just hasn't been tried before.
but many of them don't claim, they don't openly claim they're communists.
We just have to woke harder. We just have to woke harder. And eventually it will take.
Right. We
just have to keep on going.
Charles, like you're actually, like, all banter aside, a pretty good faith guy. Like you always talk about giving the opponent your argument, all this stuff. I think that another thing you have to consider, like a guy I don't know, but that I think I would dislike if I had to hang out with him and drink beer, is Ben Crump, the lawyer. Like it strikes me that a lot of these dudes, like a lot of the people that work under Al Sharpton, Sean King, so on, and some of these people may be individual funny. Hanging out with them. But the people in those organizations are there because they're making $170,000 a year. Like, CARE's not going to deny that there's conflict between Muslims in the West ever, because that's the purpose of the organization.
Right.
I worked for the Human Rights Campaign when the issue was like, you can be fired as a gay or female executive, briefly.
Yeah.
But I mean, if the question now is, are there 100 genders? So, I think they've won already. The organization could go away. It just never.
So what was interesting when I was like doing research for the book, I have not really delved into like sort of the gay rights movement before. It's just never really been an interest of mine. But I found it fascinating in my research how a lot, because they've had such success, because marriage equality and all these things, like they got what they wanted, but they still needed to pay people and they still needed to fundraise. And so they shifted a lot of the focus of gay rights organizations like GLAAD into the T. And that's a lot of why we're seeing such an emphasis on the T now, because the LGBT, like people are down with. They're like, that's fine. I don't care, whatever. And so they have to push something else. They have to keep on pushing the envelope and play that victimhood card. I mean, I've worked in fundraising before. I can attest, I've done the A/B testing. Fear raises money a lot more than positivity. And so these gay rights organizations are really, in my mind, and I say this as like, heterosexual white woman. So like really I have no place to have an opinion about this, but I'm a heterosexual white woman. And so of course I have an
Have
opinion
an
about this.
opinion,
It's
yeah, because
like
all you people have an opinion.
it's like it's
Damn
my
white
job
women.
is to have an opinion. I know we really are the worst.
Yeah.
But we sort of, what was I saying? I was making fun of white women and then I got
Yeah.
distracted.
It's always so much.
Oh, and I'm actually really down for this. But so gay rights organizations, what was I saying?
They moved to the
They
T because they
moved
Success.
couldn't go
into
away.
transgender and
Yeah,
kind
they
of
moved to T
obscure
because they
gender
couldn't go
stuff because the
away.
fight was over.
Yeah, the fight was over. You had a
So
really
they
good point.
shifted.
Gosh
So they
darn.
shifted. No, you lost it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I already made that point. They shifted to the
Right.
T. And oh, this is what I was gonna say. It's really deeply unjust if you think about like the gay men and the lesbian women in your life. A lot of them are butch on the latter, and a lot of them are more effeminate on the former. And now I think about, the friends that I grew up with who ended up, my girls who married girls, my guys who married guys. They would have been told, Kyle would have been told that he's a girl, and Kristen would have been told that she's a boy. And Katie, who married Kathy, they have two beautiful children together. And if Katie had been put on gender blocking hormones and puberty blockers, she never would have become a mom. And Morgan never would have become a mom. And so I think that a lot of these gay rights organizations have really betrayed their core constituency by promoting the idea that because you deviate from traditional sort of sexual orientation, but not just orientation, but presentation, that therefore you were
You're
born in the
something
wrong
else.
body and you have to severely alter it in order to fit in. That to me, like, I shouldn't care as much because, whatever, but the sort of loudest people, and I quoted one of them, Ariel Scarcella, like she is a lesbian who's so against the transgender messaging because she's like, if I were growing up now, I would have been told I was a boy, and God knows what you people would have done to me. And I'm hot. And she is hot. And she wouldn't be as hot as a guy. Just wouldn't.
Facts.
But I think because of the many kids and the hands-on experience, we should probably end, because you talk a lot about that in the book, on parenting. I laughed on some things because I do the same thing. And it's different with 1 and 9, or you probably just had a baby while we were here on the pod. But
Possible.
I mean, if y'all don't get
I've
it,
been
she
known
got a
to
lot of
drop a
kids.
baby.
That's
I've been
all I'm
known to
saying. She
drop
got a lot of
babies in
kids.
public.
But you talk about screening and all that. It's one thing how people used to be able to, like, certain networks, certain TV shows, I knew it was okay, I can just give it to my kid.
Mm-hmm.
But now I mean, I still tweak it, but I draw a line somewhere around 15. Anything, nothing after 2015. Mostly far before that, but definitely nothing after that. So
Yes.
it's like my son's like an old man now. Like, people are joking because he's 7 and he walks. I was telling Shemeka, remember I tell you, Shemeka, that my son goes around singing like 80s rock songs?
Mm-hmm.
Because think about it, he loves music, and I don't want to stifle his interest in music. But if he listened to today's R&B, anything, but even kind of country, but anything else currently, it's all, if it's not profanity. I mean, you're amazing how many love songs got the little E next to it on Apple or whatever. So they're all using profanity, and when they don't, they're extremely explicit. Like when I was younger, even the love songs, they were singing about the same thing, but they use double entendre and innuendo, so you can hear it and not know what they're saying. But here it's out there, so we can't really listen to that.
Yeah.
So go listen to Sticks or something. You'll be fine, whatever. So it's that, and then TV show, he's watching old stuff. He's watching your ET and all that stuff because he can't watch the stuff that's on now. And you talk, it's funny how you almost get caught. You think something's, you've seen a couple things, you screen it, and then but they're making new ones. So now you got to watch the next season because that kind of thing comes up. So there's that.
Yeah.
And
that, you know what that happened with? Speaking of being a white woman, Fuller House.
Oh, really? Yeah. But at least it was Fuller, so it was kind of new. It wasn't the original. You would play it because it was after 19, so you should have known. You need to watch it and rewatch. Watch because it was like, I know.
It was Candace Cameron Bure.
You're right, yeah.
Continuation of Full House. The first season was okay, and then Jodie freaking Sweetin.
Yep, right. That's it. She's at the marches. She's at the marches. But here's
she is
right. So you get all that, but you got to monitor all this stuff, and who's got time to watch it before and do all that.
Mhm.
But another thing you
I
mentioned
don't want
that
to watch
I had a
it.
friend that wrote a book about it. I need to get him on, but people forgot all about that because we got with COVID and everything was the screen time. And not that I'm anti-screen time, but most of the kids are on it too much. When COVID
Yeah.
hit, they were on it even more. But then they're
Yep.
also on it for school, right? And then the schools, Shemeka, have you noticed this? The schools got soft because of COVID. So they closed because of COVID. Let's just assume they're right. I know it's hard for you, Shemeka. Let's pretend they were right. COVID was bad, they closed the school. But how many of you have seen them close school for BS reasons? I think I don't know if I can't remember which one of you wrote the chapter, but you talked about it. But I was talking about this before. How there are no more snow days was the first thing you noticed, right? Because now it just
Yep.
becomes remote learning. Then they
Right.
started closing for
It's
all these other
windy.
reasons. What'd you
It's
say?
windy. It's windy.
Yeah, they close for these little
Mhm.
things, but now they close for like teachers' mental health day or all these
Mhm.
other things, or they
Yeah.
have these random half days. So now they can close on a whim. Now they can just close for anything. So now you know they're pushing kids to more screen time. I interviewed a girl on my radio show in high school. We talked about is wokeness affecting all this other stuff. The most interesting part of the interview was how she said, I said, what is life like? It's been a long time since I've been to school. She's like, it's sad. We go into school, all the kids wear hoodies, and now they're wearing masks and hoodies, so you can't see their face. They sit in the class. The school gives them tablets, so they're working on tablets. The boys hack it, and they're just playing video games. The girls are doing homework. She said she went into a class, sat there for 50 minutes, and left, and no one said a word to each other.
Mm.
That is sad. I mean,
Yeah. And
that's
I'm
sort of
serious
that.
about it is windy. We
Oh
closed
yeah, I know.
because it was windy.
No,
Wow.
it was funny actually. When I was a kid, they did that, and I lived in a place where they never canceled school, and
Mhm.
I was like, "It's ridiculous." And then I stood outside, and I like almost got blown over. So I will
Watch the
defend
wind,
my
right,
school
Bethany?
district
Watch the
doing
wind.
that once.
And one thing you didn't write about, Bethany, but I want to know your thoughts on them actually change. So they went in on all these other fronts. They run the schools, they're doing this, they're, the screen time, the COVID mandates, all this other stuff. But how about the fact that they're changing stuff? You did write about them telling authors like, this book is pretty good, but if you really want to get it sold, you should throw
Yeah.
some progressive stuff in there. But how about they're changing stuff like the Roald Dahl stuff, the fact that they were changing people like you got to buy physical
Yeah.
books because if you bought Kindle, they would update your Kindle with the new words in it.
Mm.
Yeah. So a lot of that stuff happened after we went to print,
Oh,
unfortunately. So
right.
I did talk about Dr. Seuss.
Yep.
And it's funny because they call us the book banners because we don't want literal pornography in school libraries. But I own a copy, which is now like priceless, of O Zebra by Dr. Seuss. And the Seuss Industries is not like it's run by people who have no familial
Right, it's not his
association with
family. Mm-hmm.
Seuss. Yeah, it's just like a job for these people. And I consider myself a subject area expert on Dr. Seuss because I read O Zebra 3 times yesterday. So I'm a subject area expert
Right.
on O
And you're a
Zebra.
white woman, so
Yeah, I mean, but no, I mean O Zebra. I'm on it. And I genuinely don't know why they decided to take that book out of circulation. There was because I was looking for it and I was like trying to like take the mantle of like always offended. I was like, maybe it's this picture? Maybe, I don't know. He was kind of wearing a turban, but like, was that it? Was that the whole thing? And that's the
Yeah.
reason why I can't buy this book on Amazon anymore. But that was really at the time of our writing, the Seuss Industries pulling those books off the circulation was really the only sign of it.
oh,
And it
okay.
has really ramped up now. I mean, we're seeing it with Roald Dahl, we're seeing it with R.L. Stein,
Yep.
Agatha Christie as well.
Mm-hmm.
Every other day there's another writer who's being changed in this way by like these folks who graduated with like a degree in English and then couldn't get another job except for being like a lowly editor at Penguin Random House, and they have not an artistic bone in their bodies, and they're like actually editing Roald Dahl,
Right. Let's edit
one
the whole
of the
book.
most iconic
Right.
writers of
And the
English
edits were
language.
dumb. The edits
They were
made
so
no
dumb.
sense at all. I was like, this is the original. This is what they changed. Why? Right. It was silly.
Why?
And then Dr. Seuss, I thought the Lorax was one of their Bibles, right? It
Yeah,
was
I
like
mean
one of their go-tos.
yeah, I like the Seuss thing was really scary, because that was sort of the moment where I was like, and then again, quoting Tucker again, because apparently I'm like, the Tucker Oracle.
Obviously.
He said, he's like, buy physical media, buy physical media. And I mean, like, we're on video, and I can tell you, we
I
have
got
physical
physical media.
media out our brains. And now my husband
I
will
just
never
buy
let
my book.
us. But I mean, it's true. Like, you have to. I mean, we got so my kids' favorite actors are um, Robin Williams. Speaking of like only watching
Well,
things that
old
are
stuff,
old,
right?
Robin Williams and Macaulay Culkin. And so like Richie Rich is one
You
of our
didn't tell
favorite
them they're
movies.
dead, did you?
Did I tell them what?
I said, you haven't told them that they're dead yet, have you?
Oh yeah, Robin Williams. And we
I'm
had a
kidding.
very
I know
deep,
Macaulay's not dead.
dark
It was a joke.
conversation about Robin Williams actually. But Macaulay Culkin,
Mhm.
we watched Home Alone, and that scene with Donald Trump in Home Alone 2, they cut it.
Oh, the last time, the
Yeah,
time
that
my
was so
son watched it, it
silly.
was still there. It was still there when my son watched it.
We bought it
Not
on
the one
streaming. We
they
bought it on Amazon Prime.
yeah, I
It's
was
gone.
gonna say not the one they played during the holidays. They cut that one.
Wow. And all
Yeah,
he
it was
did
Home
was
Alone 2.
point. All the man did was point.
Hmm.
That's
And it was
crazy.
it was
So
kind of
silly.
disappointing, because I told my kids, I was like, oh, because they don't believe me that, like, I mean, maybe this is how we felt about Reagan, but I was like, he actually used to be like this, like, sort of entertaining person. Like, people didn't actually feel very strongly about Donald Trump either way. He was on The Apprentice, whatever. I was like, he'll actually be in this movie. And so we watched it waiting for Donald Trump. And then cut.
Maybe,
You know
maybe
what I
you.
wanted to see? I just went to see the George Foreman movie. And in one of those big fights, I came home and like watched a couple of them. They were at Trump Plaza, I guess.
Mhm.
And so I was like, oh, I wish I would have known that before so I could look at the movie to see if when they
Yeah.
recreated the scene, they
It was
actually
at the Wynn
had.
Casino. They changed the casino.
Well, no, because on the ring they had Trump Plaza, like,
Right.
and so I was wondering in the movie did they take that out? I don't remember seeing it, and
Oh,
so
they
that's
had to. They couldn't get that made
something.
with that in there, Shemeka. Not possible. It had to
I
be
mean,
gone.
Trump was just a popular,
Please.
non-controversial figure. Like, I actually watched the Comedy Central roast of Donald Trump like a couple nights ago with Jane, and it's really funny. But this was like 2014,
Right.
where he's talking about smoking weed and chasing women with Snoop Dogg, and
Yeah.
there's this whole audience. This is a real thing. Trump doesn't do drugs or drink, but apparently partied. They talk about hanging out. I mean, so and this whole lineup of people is just there, kind of waiting to shake his hand. They're all bullshitting each other, trading insults. So I mean, this is something that was the reality that existed. I mean, there's a line in a Nelly song like Bill Gates, Donald Trump, open up now.
Right.
Like that all vanished. Like George Orwell, like we were never at war with East Asia. In like 2015, that just went away, and everyone started pretending that Trump was a rock-ribbed, God-believing conservative Republican, like both sides of the fence. Just
Right.
the wildest nonsense ever.
Yep.
Bethany, let's close with the end of the book because it's interesting because you each write we like to talk about solutions. What do you do? You both talk about what do you do, but you do it from two angles. You talk about get out and get out now. Let me show you how. And Carol's like, I'm staying and I'm planting my flag and I'm fighting. And let me tell you how. So talk about that a bit and give some people a little food for thought as we fight against this craziness.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that was one of the real strengths. And when we were selling the book, a lot of the pushback was we can't just have Bethany talking about homeschool your kids, because a lot of people don't want to homeschool their kids and can't homeschool their kids,
right.
but also just really don't want to homeschool their kids. And so we kind of had to be like, no, Carol will also talk about how you can sort of stay in it and fight. But we take very different roads. We kind of go Galt in our house. Robin Williams, homeschool, like my kids are very sheltered. But in like some ways, where they're sheltered from all of this mishigas, but at the same time, like, did I have a conversation with them about how Robin Williams killed himself? Yes, I did. Um, there's real life and real reality that I think children should be exposed to um outside of all of this sort of insanity. And Carol, like her kids have cell phones. I think the older two do. And they go to public school, private school. They're fully engaged. They're listening to music. They have everything. And I think that we kind of portray our positions as really diametrical, very, very separate, but they're actually much closer than I think most people realize when you hear like, oh, one woman like homeschools her kids and like they're very sheltered and the other one, whatever. But at the end of the day, we just sort of wanted to prepare our children for all of this stuff. And for me, and I think for Carol also, we just did what felt more natural and easier. And so for Carol, like she wanted to send her kids to school and she wanted her kids to have all of these experiences. And I don't really want to. I really like spending my days with my kids. And I don't want to send them to school and fight with the school nonstop. I find that to be more exhausting than sending them to school.
It
But
is.
there,
I've experienced it.
yeah, like, and just also just waking up. My kids do a violin class at 9:30 in the morning on Thursdays, and how difficult it is to get the two of them out the house
Oh,
for
I
that
was gonna say,
one
is it like all
class.
of them lined up like this? I can see, visualize your kids like this.
So bad.
I can see
Just take
Christopher
it.
Plummer
Just
with your house with the whistle.
yeah,
Do they
it's
do
so
that?
bad. I'm
That'd be
like,
cool.
just take the croissant in the car. Just get in the freaking car. Just go. Just walk. I can't imagine doing that every morning. So a lot of our decision making is also just what we think is easier. But at the end of the day, you have to fight. And it's just a matter of the fights that you want to pick and the fights that you don't. And for me, I think it's easier to homeschool and I think it's more enjoyable to homeschool. But it doesn't mean I don't have to fight and it doesn't take effort. And it's the same on her end as well.
Right.
You
All
have
right.
4 children?
4.
Six.
6.
6.
I have
do
4
you plan
boys.
on
I have 4
4
boys and 2 girls.
Okay, 2 girls. Do you plan on having more?
Was this question planted by my mother-in-law? Are you being paid by Mrs. Mandel to ask me that question?
I'm telling you, you're like the Sound of Music. I see you and I picture Christopher Plummer with the whistle and all the kids coming in, they just marching.
No. I
You need
mean,
2
you
more. That's all you
saw
need. Just 2 more. Just
I
twins. You
see
can do
all
it
of these
once.
people now having like 10, 12 kids, and they have, they're doing well on like Instagram, and they have all these followers.
You could be an
and stuff.
influencer,
so
Bethany.
you should follow me on Instagram because my kids are not all wearing matching like the Instagram like baking bread and the matching like all pastels. Like that is not us.
Oh.
Most of my children
Okay.
don't wear underwear on any given day.
What are you on Instagram?
Is that too much information? Oh, Bethany Shondark on
Can I
Instagram.
sign off first before you start having an additional personal
Oh,
conversation?
Somebody else may want to follow her.
yeah, follow me,
her
Bethany
children.
Shondark. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait a second. So that's my work one. I bifurcated. That's my work one.
Okay.
My personal one is Bethany S. Mandel on Instagram.
Ooh, that's the wild one.
I mean, that's like I'm homeschooling and here's like the wooden homeschool supplies that I really like. Treasures from Jennifer. Just throw in that. That was a free mention, Jennifer. Paid you $1,000 for wooden homeschool manipulatives.
And you're Jewish.
Shemeka, all of our guests are
I know, that's
Jewish.
why I kept on joking
In order,
about the Jews.
apparently, Shemeka, to be on this show, you have to be Jewish or an atheist.
And I
And
can't
sometimes
tell
both.
You know,
Sometimes
you know what I say to
We
everyone
make some
now?
exceptions for Black Christians. I mean, we've had a few of them on.
Very
Couple
rare,
God
though.
believing brothers.
They got to fill out a form or something. They got to pay their tithes or something to get on here.
Yeah. Okay, maybe I can see
like-
it now.
But good, you can figure it out. And you're like, and you're Jewish. There's a whole thing. You have to go watch a couple of the past episodes. But there's a whole thing about Shemeka and Jews. It's hilarious. It's not racist, but it's hilarious.
Yeah, I just
So, I mean, I think Shemeka and I are on the same page. I also have my beef with the Jewish people.
She doesn't have beef with the Jew. It's
yeah,
like
I
she
just
didn't
don't
that
know.
she-
I can't
Just
tell
doesn't like
if
'em.
someone is Jewish.
Oh, I
She's
mean,
like-
it's not like we're a star on our arm. This isn't
I got
Nancy
to
I will
Jewish
say
Germany.
star.
the Mandel clued me in, but I don't know. I didn't really see a reason to bring
Well,
it
that's my
up at any
married
point.
name.
How about Horowitz?
Yeah.
Come on.
my-
You think
yeah.
I don't do
Good
my
sign.
homework, Bethany?
That one's obvious.
Well, she is Bethany Mandel, columnist, editor at Ricochet, and co-author of Stolen Youth, How Radicals Are Erasing Innocence and Indoctrinating a Generation, with the friend of the show, Carol Markowitz. Bethany, thank you for joining us.
Can I be a regular? This
You
was
can.
super duper fun.
You can. We love you.
I really
You
enjoyed
can.
this.
Free in the home of the brave. God get all of the praise. I got a country to save because I'm Patriot J and I'm saving a day.